Hello and welcome. I am the Otaku, and today we are looking at the Star Wars Battlefront RT-97C blaster, or what I like to call the Skill Blaster. I'm just kidding, I don't actually call it that, but let's face it, this is probably the most difficult weapon to use. The RT-97C, which I'm just going to henceforth refer to as the 97C, is extremely underrated and underrepresented in the game. So the major reason for this is that people assumed it was a direct upgrade of the DLT-19, which is unlocked very early on. They look similar, have similar stats, and are both in the heavy blaster category. People use the DLT-19, went to the 97C, and it just didn't behave the way they expected. Something was off. Now, after some research, it became widespread on YouTube and Reddit that while this weapon appears to be better, it really isn't what you're expecting because it has a horrible spread, which results in poor accuracy. Now, if you want more information on the DLT-19, I suggest you go and watch my other video on it. I'm not going to be going into too much detail about it, just enough to explain why the 97C is different and still relevant. This is also not necessarily meant to be a video of one versus the other, which one's better. Both weapons are great and have their own place. However, in the future, if you do want something like this, feel free to come back, subscribe, and you'll see some Blaster Showdown videos where I do directly compare them, going head to head with each statistic to find out which one really is the best for each kind of situation. Now I'm going to pull up the stats from Synthic.com so you can get a better idea of what this weapon can do. I'm going to put a link in the description below if you're interested in checking out the website and seeing where I got that from. So the 97C does 17 damage, and then at 10 meters it starts to drop off. So between 10 and around 50 meters it's dropping off from 17 and it goes down to 14. So then at that 50 meter mark it just kind of caps off and it stays there. So in English, what that means is the blaster does a bit more damage in very close quarters, and then also maintains most of its damage even at long ranges. You're going to have no problem being competitive in close or medium ranges. I would suggest hip firing at this point, and you can win a lot of gunfights, even versus something like the DL-44. For longer ranges, you're going to want to take advantage of the scope, so you can accurately handle the weapon. If you're not scoped in, then you might not realize where you're shooting. The rate of fire on the 97C is 600 RPM, which ties it for first place in fully automatic weapons on Battlefront, with guess what? The DLT-19. With this rate of fire, the weapon has no problem sticking on targets at long range, and you also won't be punished as much for missing shots in close range. Due to the high rate of fire, this weapon does particularly well with the explosive shot star card. The recoil on the 97C is mostly vertical. It has a 0.25 going upwards, and then a little bit horizontal on the left with a 0.15. In reality though, the recoil is hardly noticeable at all, and doesn't even need to be controlled in most situations. Like I said, at very long ranges, if you're scoped in, you're going to know where you're shooting, and it's not really that much of a problem. The spread on the 97C starts at 0.1, which is great, but it increases at a staggering 0.15 per shot, meaning your first few shots should be accurate, but at 600 RPM, if you just hold down the trigger, you're going to run into problems. So this begs the question, why bother using the 97C, especially over the DLT-19? And what it really comes down to me, in my opinion, is that it's skill and playstyle. Now, if you already watched my video on the DLT-19, you will have an idea of what I mean. But if not, just to give you an idea, it's that the DLT-19 is very simple, easy to use. Even veterans love it because they don't have to think while they're using it. But the problem is it has a horizontal recoil pattern, and it lacks any kind of scope. It makes it a little ineffective at the longer ranges, even though the weapon is capable of it. The DLT-19, in my opinion, is intended to be more of a hip-fire machine. This is also how a lot of people use it. I know the game says it's a heavy blaster, it can shoot at long ranges, but let's be honest, with the recoil and no scope, that clearly isn't the case, and to be honest, DICE likes to lie. So then we compare that to the 97C, and the main problem, which is the spread. How do we effectively counter this? Well, the most simple answer that I came to was to toggle fire. Pay attention to my video, and you'll be a little hard-pressed to notice, but a majority of the time I'm not actually holding down the trigger. I found that a very quick and consistent tap fire was a perfect match. Like I said, I'm doing it so quickly that you don't even notice it, yet the effect it had on the accuracy and the spread was day and night. The scope on that 97C is fantastic as well. It's one of my favorites, and it's very easy to aim down sight and take out people at long ranges. When you're zoomed in like that, you can control the weapon so much better. And like I said, this just isn't something that the DLT specializes in. It can't do it as well. So if the DLT is meant more of like a close, medium range hip fire, then how does the 97C compare? Well, the 97C does 2 more damage, but only within 10 yards. But that's also 1 less bullet to kill in extreme close quarters. So when you compare that to the DLT-19, it makes it a little bit more effective, especially for something like the DL-44, which plagues the close quarters. So if the DLT is meant more of like a close, medium range hip fire, then how does the 97C compare? Well, the 97C does 2 more damage, but only within 10 yards. But that's also 1 less bullet to kill in extreme close quarters. So when you compare that to the DLT-19, it makes it a little bit more effective, especially for something like the DL-44, which plagues the close quarters. Also, you should keep in mind that the 97C does kind of work the same way as the DLT-19. It can be hip-fired and used in a similar fashion. So the benefit of not having to scope when you're in close and medium ranges also applies to the 97C. It's just that at longer ranges, you do have the option to scope. You do have the option to toggle fire and be more accurate, even at very long ranges. Pretty much what I'm trying to get at here is that although the DLT-19 may be easier to use because you don't have to control anything for it to be effective, it also has its limitations, where if you're a skilled player and you can handle the 97C and you can learn to work with it, then you're just going to go much further. But if you try and take the 97C and just use it exactly the same way as the DLT-19, expecting to have the exact same behavior, it's just not going to work. These weapons have a bit of a fine difference between them, and they need to be treated as such. But if you're anything like me, and you feel like you're being a little too limited, a lot of the weapons are too situational, or just don't have the high level of skill cap that you want, then try out the RT-97C. Learn when to hip fire, when to aim down sight, when to toggle, how much you need to lead your shots, and finally, don't forget to stop for cooling, you don't want to overheat. Then, and only then, will you have mastered it and reap the rewards like I have. Well, that is all for now. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, come back for more, and as always, may the Force be with you.